A-B comparison in my head.
Absolutely. And Jim Moran, who's the co-host of KPFK FM's Roots Music and Beyond, did the liner notes in this album, and among the notes that there's a lot of information in these notes, and among them, he says the tracks that emerged from those sessions with Bob are not surprisingly deeply satisfying and often stunningly effective. He goes on to say, Bob has always been an intuitive vocalist, one who knew how to modulate his tone and timbre to suit the demands of the tunes he was singing, and use his powerful voice as an instrument in recording and performance fully as much as his guitar. And that voice has frequently been described as a whiskey baritone, probably because of the association with the famous song that John just mentioned, Scotch and Soda, which became his trademark song. As I said, we'll be playing that in a little while, but first we're going to go to another tune that is off the album, and I'll get the cue sheet up here so I know, so I can attempt to pronounce this. As many of you know, Bob was originally from Hawaii and has carried on and dear love of his home state and home area all these years. And one of the songs on the album is a salute to that love of Hawaii, and it's called Papua A'ilo.
Ikanuku e lave mai Ika mea ho ho ka haina hahea haina Mahi no na kupuna mai Ai hele pualoa ke ala hele na ka hau pau hau Ai hele pualoa ke ala hele na ka hau pau hau Ko aloha, kau mea nui He makana naka puwai Ko aloha, kau mea nui He makana naka puwai Pu Ikanuku e lave mai Ika mea ho ho ka haina hea haina Mahi no na kupuna mai Ai hele pualoa ke ala hele na ka hau pau hau Ai hele pualoa ke ala hele na ka hau pau hau
There you go. And for those of you who remember the oldies, you may remember a tune that later became Pearly Shells by Don Ho, who actually made a career off of that song, opened his own club over in Hawaii, and was a major fixture simply because of that one song as far as most of the United States was concerned, although he did do a lot of other music. The title refers to Shells of Iwa, which is the city on the beach in Oahu. It's located in the Iwa district in the city and county of Honolulu along the leeward or southern coast of Oahu in Hawaii. And that's the background of Papua O'Iwa. Hopefully I said that close to right. If not, feel free to send me those cards and emails, and we will acknowledge that on a future show. But we want to acknowledge our friends and listeners around the world, including you, and also including, of course, Mary Perry, who's an accredited disability representative in Rochester, New York, and underwrites the broadcast of the David Bowers Awards on Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ, FM 106.3 in Rochester, New York. And, of course, a salute to all of our friends back there in Rochester who listen to us through the courtesy of WRFZ, Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ FM. Thank you so much, and thank you to the good folks at Rochester Free Radio for carrying the David Bowers Awards this week, saluting Bob Shane, the sole surviving original member of the Kingston Trio, a legendary group that, it caused a rebirth of folk music in the United States that ultimately led to a whole bunch of careers, not the least of which were Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and many others. And to this day, folk music is a part of American popular music, in large part due to the resurgence created by the Kingston Trio back in the, late 50s when they started. And that great old classic Tom Dooley. I remember getting together with the guys when we graduated high school, our high school graduation, walking down the streets of Rome, New York, after the celebration on our way home, singing Tom Dooley at some ungodly hour, and somehow we managed not to get arrested. I don't know. But Bob had always wanted to record a country album, as I told you, and some pop songs. 50 years later, he finally has one. This one's been remastered from those two 50-year-old cassette tapes found in a drawer, re-recorded in the late, it was recorded originally at the Glazer Brothers Studios, 68, 69. One of the songs, a couple of the songs on the album you'll recognize as Kingston Trio songs. The Sen, for example, is one of them, and that's on the album as well. And if you're a Kingston Trio fan, you definitely have to have this album in your collection. It's the penultimate frosting on the cake. Absolutely no two ways about it. And we are so happy and honored to be able to do this show with this album.
I remember years ago, of course, it was very big in Boston, getting poor Charlie off the MTA. Give us one more nickel. Charlie just kept riding, and to this day probably still is riding on the MTA, but vote for George O'Malley, probably one of the first. Yeah, right. Probably one of the very first political songs, but it was, that was, and it was amazing, the coverage that got on local AM radio in Boston. As a kid, I remember hearing it on WMEX, which was the local top 40 station at the time, long before WRKO came along. And also on, it crossed over to MOR, which was WHDH, which was the station that my mom and dad listened to. That was that old person station where they played Tommy Dorsey and Frank Sinatra.
Lawrence Welk and Tommy Dorsey.
And I can remember hearing it on both stations. But, the Kingston Trio, and especially Bob Shane, have been a big part of so many people's lives, both, from a musician's point of view, but also from yours and my point of view, David, and that would be, of course, as radio people and playing their music
Absolutely.
on the radio and being able to identify certain songs of theirs with certain stations where we worked, with certain people that we could identify with, both that we loved and hated. But always the Kingston Trio was a constant at a lot of these stations, and I can remember working. This was after you and I met when we both worked at WQYK in Tampa, and I can remember working at WIRK, the Country K in West Palm Beach, and we played his music. Their music, the Kingston Trio, and this was back in the mid-'70s, and it was very popular, very, very much in demand, so it was in high rotation as an oldie. Any of their songs, Tom Dooley, Greenback Dollar, even Charlie on the MTA, all got airplay.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I know they did for a lot of years, if I'm not mistaken, the Metropolitan Transit Authority in Boston still has a Charlie token that you can buy for transportation on the MTA. It's been
I believe they still do.
It's been a fixture.
Yes,
yeah.
I believe they do.
It has become a fixture and is a part of Boston folklore. Poor Charlie is still riding the MTA somewhere. A fantastic album. We're going to get to another track here in just a moment. Some of the tracks that we're not going to be playing, just so that you have an idea, there are some fantastic tracks. Shel Silverstein's Ballad of Lucy Jordan is on here, and Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now. Bob also does Mickey Newbury's How's the Weather, Tim Hardin's Don't Make Promises, And as a matter of fact, they also do another Tim Hardin song, Lady Came from Baltimore. And another one that I'm just in love with is Johnny Hartford's A Simple Thing Is Love is on here as well. And also, well, we're going to play some more music because that's the best way to appreciate the album. This one coming up here is called I Don't Think of You Anymore. It's a Bobby Russell song. And here it is.
I don't think of you anymore, and I don't miss your soft touch, that's for sure. I've forgotten your warm and tender kiss. Tell the truth, I couldn't care less. I don't hear your name in the wind, and I don't wonder when I see your friend. I don't care where you go, 'cause I know where you've been. Don't even think about you now and then. I look at a picture that I had of you and I laughed till I almost cried. Though it's very plain to see I don't think of you anymore, at least not from the standpoint of my pride. I don't hear your name in the wind, and I don't wonder when I see your friends. I don't care where you're going, 'cause I know where you've been.
Don't think about you now and then.
Who am I kidding?
Don't think about you anymore.
Oh, I'm not forgetting, and I don't think about you anymore.
Bob Shane from his solo album, Simple Gifts, The Lost Solo Sessions. He also does Bobby Russell's Honey is on the album, as well as a Bee Gees song, Country Lane, and some other fantastic cuts. You've got to get it. It's Bob Shane, Simple Gifts, The Lost Solo Sessions, and it's available right now all over the place. If you cannot find it through your local distributors or online, drop me a line, and I'll tell you how you can get it directly from the source, because it's available through Bob Shane as well, and be happy to pass that information along to you. Bob Shane, Simple Gifts, The Lost Solo Sessions. We're saluting Mr. Bob Shane all day on the show today, and with a couple of more serious cuts coming up. And I say serious because they have they're message songs that have they have a thematic message that is probably a little deeper than some of the tracks, which a lot of which deal with love and everyday things like that. The next track we're going to play is a very special track that deals with the aging process and Alzheimer's, the loss of memory, and it's a very, very important cut in that respect. This is a studio version that Bob did back in the late 60s of a tune called The Dutchman.
The Dutchman's not the kind of man to keep his thumb jammed in the dam that holds his dreams in. But that's a secret only Margaret knows. When Amsterdam is golden in the morning, Margaret brings him breakfast. She believes him. He thinks the tulips bloom beneath the snow. He's mad as he can be, but Margaret only sees that sometimes. Sometimes she sees her unborn children in his eyes.
Let us go to the banks waves of the ocean.